Hi everyone, my name is Casey Candela. I am a board member of the Fordham College Alumni Association. Thank you all for being here. This event is co-hosted by us and the Career Center, recent rebrand from the Career Services. The Fordham College Alumni Association, just to speak briefly about our group, is an independently chartered organization, an independent 501c3 that raises money for scholarships for Fordham students, research grants, scholarships for journalism students relevant to today, as well as tuition-based scholarships. And we also hold events like this. So we have a great group of esteemed alumni here today that we hope you will learn something from. Thank you everyone for being here. We are so grateful for you taking the time. Jeff Coltin, class of 2015, senior reporter at City and State, will be our moderator today. So I'll hand the stage off to him.
All right, thank you all. This has been a long time coming. I'm really excited. We started planning this, I don't know, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It was definitely right before the pandemic, and now we're finally able to do this. So really excited. Thank you for having me and for letting me talk more about politics even after the official day is over. But as we're going to hear from all of our panelists, if you enter into the world of politics, you're not going to be working a 9 to 5. Even if you sometimes you get a solid government job that really you clock out at 5 p.m. and that's great, but then you got to work afterwards to not get paid for it. So
when you find that, Jeff, you let me know when that is.
Exactly. So I'm going to start out with just a prompt question for all of our panelists, and they can handle it. So I would like everybody to briefly introduce themselves, and then also to answer who's one Fordham alum that you look up to or admire professionally. So introduce yourself, and then also shout out a Fordham alum who you admire professionally. And I will start, I suppose, with the county executive. We'll front load your questions. So please.
Well, thanks very much. Pleasure to be with you here. George Latimer, Rose Hill, class of 1974. It seems ancient when I say that now, but we're still here, and I look back very fondly. When I saw St. Peter's run in the NCAAs, I thought of Fordham's run back in 1971. I was a freshman on campus. I had no idea this would be the best it would ever be, and it was in my first year there, so I figured that fondly. I was born in Westchester County in Mount Vernon, went to public high school. Was a commuter to Fordham in those days. The 3rd Avenue L wasn't taken down until about halfway through my tenure, so I commuted in that fashion and went through my undergraduate career. As I mentioned, graduated in 1974. I actually worked on the Fordham campus for 2 years in 1975 and 76 in the Office of Research Services as it existed then. And a good friend of mine, Tom DiGiulio, who was a year ahead of me at Fordham, helped me score that job, which was the first full-time job I ever had, and I appreciated it. And Tom went on to be general counsel of Fordham University for many years, recently retiring. In my current position as county executive of Westchester County, I'm the 5th consecutive county executive to have some significant connection to Fordham. My 2 immediate predecessors, Rob Astorino and Andy Spalley, were undergraduates at Fordham, and their 2 immediate predecessors, Andy O'Rourke and Aldo Bello, were graduates of Fordham Law School. So there's a real Fordham streak through all of this. And I'd have to say that I have on my senior executive team my Director of Communications, Catherine Chaffee, who's also an undergraduate at Fordham. And so there's that Fordham connection across the board. When I look at people in my line of work, there's a lot of people who can claim that they did undergraduate work at Fordham. G. Gordon Liddy did undergraduate work at Fordham. I don't particularly look up to him, but he's on that list of alums. So there are alums and there are alums, and certainly in the line of work that I've done, my late predecessor Aldo Bello, who was county executive and then went on to become lieutenant governor, and he had a corporate career as a lawyer, was really an impressive county executive. He reached this job that I'm sitting in now, and he was the age of 39 and served in it for 9 years and accomplished some major things. He set the medical center, Westchester Medical Center, on its path to being a tertiary care medical facility. He combined some areas of county government, rationalized our bus system, things that as I sit here today, I can't imagine how he accomplished it. I'm sure it's a good Jesuit training, and at the end of the day, when we know that the Pope is a Jesuit, it gives me some confidence that we'll accomplish something before I leave office.
Great, thank you, Mr. Latimer. I'll hand it over to Councilman, former. You keep that title, right? You can hold it forever.
You can use whatever you like. My wife would appreciate it if you do that. That would be great. Good evening, everybody. My name is Paul Vallone. I went to Fordham College. George, you got me beat. So for me, it's 92. And in our family, yeah, you got me beat. My family, it's if my the law school students are waiting this month for admission. So if my daughter gets the good word, it would be 4 generations of Vallones at Fordham, either the college or the law school. And that's pretty unheard of, because that meant my grandfather, who was first generation from Sicily, he became a lawyer, and that was very rare back in the day. So for our family, it has been Fordham, a career in law, and believe it or not, we served 50 consecutive years in city council. So between my father, who was the very first speaker, who I would be speaking of as my idol and icon in all things, Peter Vallone reshaped government in New York City. There wasn't equal branches. It was all about the mayor. When he saw that inequity, he actually went to the Supreme Court and challenged that and created what the council is today, which is basically an equal governing body. So that was my dad, Peter. My brother, Peter Jr., he was a council member following in my dad in Astoria, again, Fordham College, Fordham Law School. He's now a judge, and he's doing wonderful in the Court of Claims. I went a little different. My wife and I moved out to Flushing and decided to try politics in that side of the world, and it was different. You always want to be your own person, following the legacy before you. Lost the first election, continued on, won, and represented Northeast Queens, and I just finished this past January. And now, we'll talk about it a little later, but the things you get to do with that path is actually make some legacy changes. There never was a veterans agency in the country. Could you imagine that? There never was an agency for veterans in the country. So one of the bills we put forward back in the day was to create a veterans agency in New York City. That was about to pass. Mayor de Blasio then the next day announced the creation of a veterans agency. January 1st, yes, coincidentally, that's how it happened. And then, by the way, the secret's behind the scenes. If you get the votes, the mayor's going to put something on within a week to make sure it happens. January 1st, my career in politics term limited over. See a deputy commissioner spot in the agency to veterans, and that's where I am today. So it's all connected, and we'll talk about that tonight, but more about it's what you want to hear from that journey. It's been 30 years as a lawyer, 10 years as elected official, and now my new journey as deputy commissioner.
Thanks so much, on to Joanna.
Hello everyone, good evening. Thank you so much to the Career Center now, and to everyone else who just put this whole event together. So I'm one of the younger ones on this panel today. I actually graduated from Fordham Lincoln Center in 2019, so I'm a very recent graduate. And right now I am serving at Senator Biaggi's office as her Director of Strategy and Operations. And so it's been a journey, I think, just coming from Fordham and heading into politics really with no connections, because I'm a Colombian immigrant. I came here when I was 3. I was raised in Queens. And even just like going into college was a real risk for me because Fordham was expensive for me. I came from like a low-income neighborhood. And so just being a first-generation Colombian immigrant going into politics, not having any connections was very, very overwhelming at one point. But I think what really pushed me forward was just networking and talking to people and making friends and getting your name out there and just getting to know a lot of people. And so I started my journey off at interning at Assembly Member Blake's office, and he serves the South Bronx area. He was an assembly member then. He ran for a few other positions, and so I learned a lot from that position. And I think one of the things that I learned was what we've all been touching on, which is politics and working in government really isn't a 9-to-5 thing. And I had to kind of go through that whole process, relearning and understanding that if I really wanted to continue in this career, it was going to take a lot of effort, a lot of strength, a lot of managing your own boundaries and understanding what your own boundaries are before going into this career. And so now I'm here at Senator Biaggi's office. She was supposed to be here with us, but she wasn't able to make it because she's actually still negotiating the budget with folks right now. And so it's been a long process as we speak right now.
A week late.
A week late, yes, a week late. She's actually right now in that process, and so heading up to Albany and everything. So it's been a journey. I absolutely love it, and I don't really see myself anywhere outside of government, I think. But it's definitely something that you have to talk to folks and really get to know the nitty-gritty of what it's like before actually stepping into it, because it does take a huge commitment from your life, and it takes a lot of passion just to continue. Like, I think every person that serves in government really is there, whether they're an employee in a department or whether they are an elected official or working at an elected official's office. It really takes passion to be in those positions, because it takes a huge toll on you, and it's a long journey. So I'm here to just hear from you all and to talk to you all and be a friendly young face, and let you all know that even if, right, you are coming from a background that you have no connections, there is a door and there is a way, and there's always an opportunity. So the whole myth that opportunities are scarce is a myth, because the opportunities are there. So that's it for me.
Any alums you look up to?
Oh, well, my boss, Senator Biaggi.
Makes sense. She's not here. You don't have to say that.
She's not here, but I have to say that she is really someone that I truly look up to. She's the person that, a lot of people say she's a rebel, but like, I just say she stands out all the time, and she does what she thinks is right. And so I love that, because I'm also that way. I always push for whatever I think and believe that is the best for everyone. So I would say Senator Biaggi.
Absolutely. On to you, Doug.
All right, hi everyone. My name is Doug Spring. I'm the Senior Associate and Manager for Outreach and Advocacy at Kasirer. Kasirer is New York City's #1 lobbying firm. I've been on that team for 3 years now, 2 of which have been in a pandemic. So it's been very interesting to learn how to lobby my fellow elected officials up here through Zoom and through emails. I'm sure former Council Member Vallone misses my name in his inbox on a daily basis.
Yes, you're quite persistent.
Yes. So my whole professional career thus far has been either Fordham or Kasirer. I started at Fordham as a resident director after I graduated, while I did the elections and campaign management master's program. I graduated from that in 2018, and I'm a 2017 Rose Hill undergraduate as well. So I'm a double RAM. I love that. Love fellow double RAMs. And I know that there are some other soon-to-be double RAMs in the audience from the ECM program here tonight, so I'm lucky to have them here. I also run Kasirer's internship program, and several of my colleagues...
The pen started going. The pen started writing down.
Correct, yes. Several of my colleagues are here now, brought them with us tonight, so we're not Fordham students, but we're very glad that you came out with us, because it's all about building that network, like Councilmember Vallone said earlier. So I'm looking forward to expanding on that more. Fordham alumni that I look up to would have to be my late colleague Pete Krokondalis. He passed last year. He was at Kasirer for 15 plus years, I believe. And he was in RHA at Fordham, and he lived in the same residence halls that I lived in. So that's how we bonded at first, and I'm fortunate enough to be colleagues with him for 2 years, and I look up to Pete still.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Now, as we're talking about education at Fordham, whatever, I am in a situation where I got my undergraduate, my bachelor's at Fordham, and then for the past 7 years, I've been thinking, I really should get a graduate degree, shouldn't I? Going back and forth. So, for those of you with graduate degrees, I believe Councilman, and I think Mr. County Executive, I think not a law degree, right? But a graduate.
Masters of Public Administration.
Well, perfect. So I'll go with you first. How do you think that getting the MPA has helped your career, hindered your career, whatever else?
Well, it's interesting because I went into the private sector for most of my time prior to running for public office, and in the overlap when I was a local councilman and a county legislator, and I still had employment in the private sector. What the master's program, the advanced studies did, it certainly taught programs and classes about public policy issues, but there were classes on statistics, on macroeconomics, on organization theory that could equally apply to the business world as to the governmental world. And I think in both of those two spheres, the added discipline, academic discipline, helped me express myself and sort of be able to analyze things, at a level perhaps above just the political analysis that happens when you're in public office. You sort of assess, is this popular or unpopular? Do you have the support for it? Can you get the votes? But also, you get a certain discipline in a master's program, and then if I'd ever go on to a doctorate. So I think it has been helpful to me. I chose not to go to law school. I was accepted to Fordham Law, but chose to go on to the public administration degree. And I think back on that decision as an interesting fork in the road, because I think the practice of law does help make you more able to handle public policy matters, since the law overlaps with everything we do.
Thank you. Councilman, what about you, the law degree?
I was talking this morning, I went to St. John's Prep in Astoria to the high school students, and this actually came up. The high school students are asking, going into college, making the choice, what major they should use. And believe it or not, public administration was unfamiliar. Kids don't really know public administration. When I went to Fordham in '92, it didn't exist. And I had to write a paper to create public administration as a major, because I didn't want 10 classes just in political science or economics or business. I wanted 5 in everything. And the dean didn't want to relent. And he said, give me a paper, get some professors to join on. And they did. They created public administration. And it was one of those fields that, if we're having this conversation tonight about politics, careers, finding those footholds, public administration is a great way to do that, because you're touching base with all of those. And if you're thinking about law in the background, it was the centerpiece for everything that we did. But what I always tell students, you can do anything with a law degree. You never have to set foot in the courtroom. But the possibilities are endless. And if you're thinking politics, the careers and the possibilities with the law degree opens the door even more. And when you bring the Fordham background to it, and the amount of people that you're hearing tonight are in that world, sometimes that's all that makes a difference.
And I guess you've got the you were saying you got the
I
master's,
have
right?
a master's, yes. Yeah. No,
What do you think?
From the ECM program, I mean, that's how I got all of my political connections to start with. The undergrad career for me was interesting because I never really had a path that I liked, like the council member just said. I didn't want to take 10 classes in one major. So I actually took the international political economy major, which probably several of you have done already in here. So that touched on many of the various different areas that I found interesting. And I minored in political science because I skewed more toward that. And then when senior year rolled around, I had a professor, Kostas Panagopoulos, and he ran the ECM program at the time. And I said, great, let's stick around and do that. And I did, and that's how I got to Kasirer as an intern originally, and built my network from there.
Now, speaking of internships, for any of you, but Johana first, I'd like to start. I mean, they're kind of often parallel paths, graduate school and internships. But how did you start your career here? Was it with an internship, and how did you navigate that and get to where you're now getting paid?
I mean, yes, that's a huge one. I think internships are super important. I actually started interning at Assemblymember Blake's office, and I started there as his assistant, and just a month in, I was hired as his assistant officially. So I really just started off with that. Post-graduate, when I graduated in 2019, I was really thinking of, should I do a graduate program? Should I go into law school? And I was supposed to go into law school. That was the plan. But the last year of my senior year, I was trying to juggle a whole bunch of things, leadership positions and different boards, and we all know how that goes. And then also, like, I was interning at Assemblymember Blake's office and working like 2 jobs, and it was a lot. I overburdened myself to the point where I actually had to take like a small mental health leave from school, and that's kind of like where I chose to not go to law school and not do a master's program, because I prioritize my mental health, and I said this is more important right now at this moment, and there's going to be another moment where more opportunities will arise, so it's fine. And so post-graduating, I actually spent 6 months without a job because I moved on from Assemblymember Blake's office, and then because of the connections that I made at Assemblymember Blake's office, I ended up at Senator Biaggi's office. So I think interning is just as important, and I would say obviously a title is like a master's in law is super important, but I also think that interning and going to these places and just being there, connecting with folks and making friends is also really, really important. I think a lot of what I've learned now has come just through interning at different places, and also learning in my position as well. So.
Now, this sector is notorious for unpaid internships, volunteer work, that sort of thing. Have you guys noticed, I mean, is this changing? Is there a change there, or is still a lot of unpaid internships in your agencies, in your own experience, anything?
Can we be honest?
Please, of course.
I mean, it's a field where it's government service and government work. So unfortunately, I wish a lot of it was paid, because it's important work that interns are doing. Like, and I remember the work that I was doing, and it was not paid. And so there are some paid positions. Like there's like the legislative assistant that you can do, and for like undergrad and graduate, there are some paid positions that you can do and become a fellow, etc. But most positions in at least elected official offices, I think, are unpaid at the moment, and I wish that was different. So I hope to see a change there, honestly. And I'm actually the manager of our intern program at our office, and so at one point we had more than 15 different interns, and so the way that I really kind of like tried to manage it was I was very respectful of people's time, and I told them, look, I'm not requiring you to be here 10, 15, 20 hours because it's not fair, it's not paid. And so some of the interns, just to get a small piece of experience, they would intern 6 hours. And 6 hours is something because you get exposure. And so I tried to at least respect people's time when it wasn't paid. And some of them were paid through programs and stuff, so we tried to get that for folks as well. But most of it is unpaid, unfortunately. So hopefully we can be the generation of change to make that different, you know, so.
Yeah, Kasirer, we're fortunate enough to offer a paid internship program because we are in the private sector of government relations. I have to explain that to my grandparents pretty regularly that I do not work in government.
I work for a company called City and State.
Correct.
It gets very confusing. It is a private company, but.
But many of our applicants do have that experience from unpaid internships, and we really look for that in our applicant pool to see if they've already built some sort of framework of a network and have some sort of background in political world.
For me, it was just a matter of you want to get in the door. So if I'm there and you're coming to me and you're willing to do what it takes to get into the office to make a difference, you always want to get the payment, but you know that's not your long-term position.
Right.
It's making an impact when you get in the door. So if it's paid or not paid, then you have the opportunity to show that person why you should be critical to that person's staff. It's on you then. So however you get in the door, to me, you make that impact. And it's different for everyone. Sometimes the financial realities of our life, we need to get a check every day. If I don't get a check by the end of the week, I'm not paying my kids' tuitions, my mortgage, my house. That's just the way it goes. So you don't have that. But when you're coming out of college or going to law school, to make that first impact, sometimes you have to make that sacrifice just to get in. You know, some of the internships are paid, some of them are just, you make an impact. And I remember just as we see those that come to us, students stand out. And then your future staff, every person that worked with me at some point hit the ground, knocking on doors, helped with long nights, civic associations, petitions, whatever needed to be done, we did it for a common goal. And then in the end, when there was a job to be had, who did you offer the job to? The people that blood and sweat tears for you.
County Executive, can I put you on the spot as the leader of your office? What's your internship program like? You got some paid internships, unpaid? How big?
Well, I think once you get outside of the city of New York government and the state of New York government, most of the rest of the governments around the state, even a county as large as Westchester, just doesn't really have the resources to put together the kind of internship program. When I was in the state assembly and the state senate, there was a robust program. In fact, one of the assembly interns that I had 10 years ago, 11 years ago, is now my chief of staff. He's been with me through my senate years and now here in the county executive's office. There was another young man who was in high school and interned with me for a couple of months into the summer. And when he graduated college, we hired him on, and now he's with me as well. So internships do matter. But the size and scope of our government as a county government, a local government at that, really doesn't lend itself to having extensive paid internships. We usually will have intern programs that are tied around an academic period of time, either May and June for high school individuals or July and part of August for college students. We work it out so they get some credit, but it isn't a paid internship. There is a great value in internships, and I believe in them, but I think when we talk about, once you get outside of the city, the size of towns and cities and villages just don't lend itself to that. Even the bigger counties, Erie, Suffolk, and Nassau, just don't have the resources, as we do not have the resources to have a robust internship program.
Makes sense, yeah. That's one of the things that seems to be somewhat changing in government. I mean, when I was interning in 2014 in political journalism, it was unpaid, and I was working totally free. And then since then, the company has adopted a paid internship program, like kind of keeping up with the times a little bit, so that's really good to see. Speaking of these changes, Mr. County Executive, like you've been in government now for, what did you say, 30-something years? Or?
A long time.
What are some of the biggest changes that you've seen, or the biggest change that you've seen over the decades into politics?
I'll give you just a couple, and there are many more, that we can talk about. I think from a day-to-day facet, technology has changed the way we operate dramatically. I ran for the city council in the city of Raleigh in 1988. Folks weren't, alive at that point in time. We had no cable TV coverage, live streaming of public meetings. None of that existed. Now we have technology that can have virtual platforms for legislative meetings, Zoom meetings. With the pandemic, we've had to do a lot of things like that in that format. Being able to sit at a desktop computer, if that trend continues or in some way deepens between the parties and within the parties, where we tend to move further to the extreme points of view and less willingness to compromises. If any compromise is seen as capitulation. So I'd say technology and the hyper-partisanship would be the two biggest things I could point to over my extent of time.
Yeah, Councilman, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, especially your seat flipped to Republican this past year.
My seat was always Republican before me. Mm-hmm. So
you were the flipper, really?
I was the flipper, yeah. So in New York City, there's not many districts that are not Democrat anymore. But in Northeast Queens, it's one of the last places, probably in the country, that is 99% residential. There's not an apartment building to be found. So the differences that George, you just spoke about, and the things that used to perplex me was each district and where you're born and where you live is unique to you. Because you're represented from that district, the challenge is to learn from each other and find out what that district needs, maybe not be so different from what my district needs. But even if I have the votes, it's not to forget what your district needs too. And that's the problem. Whatever party's in power now doesn't want to give up that power and doesn't listen to what the other community or party needs, because through that party is control. What we tried to do, and a lot of times was unsuccessful, because if you have the votes, how do you stop it? So we would be in the middle ground, right? My district was a very moderate district as a Democrat. So if you had to try to make a vote pass, how would I get other council members to vote with me, elected officials, on any level? You had to make yourself available to understand that district's needs, that legislation, and make your district and your community relatable to them. So that even if they had the vote, maybe the best thing you could do is mitigate it, get an amendment, make it not as severe, to then get some type of Pyrrhic victory for your district to say we weren't forgotten. That art has been totally forgotten, and it has been ramrod one way. If you have the vote, don't listen to anyone else. And that, to me, has been the biggest change. George mentioned my dad. When he was speaker, every council member would come in and say what was unique to their district, and they would find a common ground for the budget. That doesn't really happen anymore. You know, whoever has the vote, that's the way it was. How you make your mark in that type of world is how you challenge and then represent your community to the best you can by saying, okay, I know you've got the vote, hear me out. I've got seniors just as you have seniors. I have veterans, you have veterans. I have affordable house crisis, we have small businesses, you have small businesses. Then all of a sudden things start to relate. And then it's not so much a demographic issue, an ethnic issue, cultural issue. It becomes, we're all on that same journey together here in the city. How can we spread those resources out? So to me, the biggest shift was the lack of cooperation from the party that had the vote in the beginning towards now. It's, this is the way it is, deal with it. And I always had a tough time in that world. I tried to balance the best I could, but you have to bring things back to your district. Listen, my district flipped again, went back to Republican. It shows you people are frustrated and they want to see a change, and it doesn't matter what you bring to the table. And probably another change, George, now is the generation is you. The council member's average age now is like 25. I'm the old man. Dick George is at 50. I was like the grandfather in the council. Guys were bike riding at the city hall, and I'm like, wait a minute, I just took my kids to school. I had to make lunch. It was a whole different approach, but that's the change. Like, you can make the change tomorrow. I had to go on the line when it was my time to wait, and that day is over. You can just go right in and make that change today.
Speaking of changes, you guys have had less time in your respective careers, but 2 governors, 2 mayors.
Yes.
You've each had some changing experiences. So I guess quicker answers here, but Johana, what's the difference between Governor Cuomo and Governor Hochul?
I think the pandemic has a lot to do with both experiences, because when I started with Senator Biaggi, it was in December literally before the pandemic started, in like around March. And so most of my experience with Governor Cuomo was virtual. So I think it's definitely a change, you know, and I think there's a lot to learn from both administrations, but I do appreciate the open lines of communication that we have now with Governor Hochul's office that we didn't necessarily have before. But
that's an understatement.
I mean, yeah, but like, you know, I think that's a huge change. But I think what's most important to know is that she is a powerful young person that's in that position, and I think that there's a lot to learn, right? There's a lot to learn. I think especially during this budget process, it's been absolutely insane. So I think if you follow politics or local politics, you've been able to see kind of like the struggle we've been having for the past couple of months, but I think mainly the past 2 weeks. So I think in general, it's definitely very different.
Mm-hmm. And Doug, has your job changed a lot from de Blasio to Adams?
Recently it has, only because my political career began at the end of someone's administration, and now we're only at the beginning of the new administration. So people are beginning to find their footing, priorities are being set. You know, as the council member said, he was term limited, left office on January 1st. 34, I believe, of his other colleagues did the same thing. So we had to build new relationships, understand those new priorities, and as he said, significantly younger council, more progressive than the previous body. I lobbied a council member the other day who's 23 years old. That's exciting. And so that's been a great transition. We've also seen like the flow of work has been different. My first year in this position, not to say it was slow. Don't quote me as saying it was slow.
I'll say it. It was slow.
It was a little slow. It was a little slow.
I'm gonna tell Sue.
And then it picked up a little bit the last 6 months of the administration as folks, Councilmember Vallone and his colleagues were trying to push legacy projects through the council, picked up a little bit. And now we're really hitting the ground running with new priorities. So it's a learning curve every day.
So I want to talk about using the Fordham network. That's the one thing we all have in common here. This network of people that went to Fordham, are associated with Fordham, and now work in politics and in around politics. So I'll start with you, County Executive. I'm intrigued, like, when you were campaigning for all of these offices, I mean, do you hit up all of your classmates at Fordham and your professors, and then, how else have you used your network in your career here?
Well, I think the presence in Westchester County, and I assume it's true in the 5 boroughs and on the island, probably in North Jersey, of Fordham grads is really widespread. And many times, it wasn't so much that I hit them up, the classic, let me raise money from them. But I do have classmates of mine or people I was in school with. And of course, since I've been out of school for so long, most of these people are established in their careers, and if they have resources, they have them. But what really is helpful is the information examples that come from. I'll give you one example. A classmate of mine at Fordham, when I was an undergraduate, we were on WFUV together when it was a student-run station. Rita Cioli is now the editorial director for Newsday. Now, Newsday doesn't cover Westchester County, but there's a congressional district that's just been created through redistricting that takes a tail of Westchester and attaches it to what was the Tom Swazi district in Nassau County. That tail in Westchester is exactly the district that I represented in the New York State Assembly and previously in the county. So all of a sudden, Rita Cioli, Rose Hill, or Thomas More, class of 74, George Latimer, Rose Hill, class of 74, now editorial director of Newsday, Westchester County Executive. We have a conversation, and we have a common footprint of friendship that goes back X number of years. I don't want to date her, but it goes back to X number of years, and we can talk, and we haven't seen each other much over the years, but I can give her some candid insight into what I think that piece of the district is like, and that multiplies out. I have friends from Fordham who are in commercial real estate, who are professionals in the medical field and the law field, and it helps break through a barrier if you have that common experience. And we may have had a couple of professors together, or we talk about what it was like on the campus in the days when we were there, and then that lends to a little more easier relationship as we work in the here and now.
I'm going to do a little reporting here. Have you talked to Senator Biaggi about that part of Westchester County as well, now that she's running for Congress?
I was with Senator Biaggi on the porch of a home in Larchmont on Sunday, where she had a fundraiser and meeting people, and I've known Alessandra for a number of years, and we worked together pretty closely. In fact, when first time we met, the Fordham conversation came up. The problem for me is I graduated back when dinosaurs ruled the earth. So people who graduated Fordham in the last 10 years or so, it's like, I could be in the class of 1880 as far as they're concerned. It's a different campus.
Yeah, fewer people to talk about. I get that. For the rest of you, how have you used the Fordham network in either finding jobs, raising money, whatever else?
Every day. Just simple. They never go away. They're always there. And sometimes, we forget that. Your problems of the day, you sometimes forget that the family's there to help in different capacities. And, we get overwhelmed each day, whether it's class, family, home, individual scenarios. And then all of a sudden, like George just said, there'll be a Fordham friend in some capacity, somehow. And it makes that better. And you will find that out as you go through. It's not that you walk through with a golden F over your head. It's just that the Fordham family finds each other somehow. And in the world of politics, it can be a lonely world. It can be a very difficult world. It can be a world you're being yelled at every day and challenged. And it's not you, it's your entire family with you. So whoever's in your circle is under that attack too, for whatever you brought on or not. So when you can find that Fordham family safety net to bring through that, it has gotten me through some very difficult times.
Yeah, I would add on that it's very comforting when you find that someone is a Fordham Ram, especially like being early on in your career. It's a great conversation starter. You build a rapport very quickly, and then you're able to build that relationship off of that. When am I going to see you next? at Jubilee or something like that, or one of these networking events, right? Or, you know, who knows the next Fordham Ram? I feel like it's 1 degree of separation only between the next Ram.
Or if it's George's case, it's a lot of degrees of separation. You keep bringing it up, George. I don't know what you're doing.
And I'll just say, Doug, I think that's how we connected, right? Like,
That
I think
is.
I met you professionally as a lobbyist, and
First,
then it was
yes.
like, oh, Fordham, and then we connected, we talked, and you know, I meet a lot of lobbyists, but like, I like you extra, you know?
That means the world to me. Team, take that down. Write it down.
Yeah, we kind of like you. We kind of like
He
you.
hasn't tweeted at me today yet, so we're good.
And Joanna, yeah, any connection to the network that's helped you out here?
I would say every Fordham alum that I've met has been super friendly. Like, that is across the board, and I don't think it's something that other schools and their alum can like relate to. I feel like every person that I've met that has come to Fordham has a unique experience, whether you're a commuter like me or whether you were someone that like stayed on campus. There is something common about coming to Fordham and being a part of the network. So I think that's helped. And also, like, I've connected with a lot of folks on LinkedIn, and I actually got my first internship because of someone that went to Fordham. So I think it's super important. That's like your first network, I would say. So network amongst yourselves, because the person that goes to your class now might be the person that you might need someday in your profession later on, and network up as well towards people that are already in those positions that you want to be in and have gone to Fordham or have not. Just like put yourself out there and do that. But I think every person that I've seen that has gone to Fordham has been very friendly. So
Let's hear a little bit from the Fordham Network. I would like to open it up to the audience for any questions for either our panel at large or individual panelists. Anything. Yeah, please.
I have a question for like the whole panel. One of like the Jesuit philosophies is men and women for and with others. So I was wondering, just for all of you, how have you incorporated those principles of social justice and kind of, you know, all the related pieces, whether it's economic justice, environmental justice, how have you incorporated that into your careers?
Please.
if I can speak first.
Of course.
Let me just say, I came from a background that was a bit conservative because my family, I grew up in the church. And so coming to Fordham, I think, and taking certain classes, really putting myself out there, taking classes that have to do with social justice and, you know, deconstruction of certain ideas and stuff, I think was super important. So the idea that like men and women are for others, and just like understanding that everyone is human at the core, no matter their theology, no matter their background, no matter like what they believe in, I think was super important for me to separate from the Pentecostal roots that I grew up with. So I think it's been amazing. I think when I went to those classes and learned so many things and was able to really understand that at the core of everyone, each person is human, it helps me every day in my job to talk to someone, like you said, across the aisle, to be able to communicate with people and let them know, hey, like, you should really care about this because this person is important. They're a human. They're a person in our community that needs help. So I think that has definitely influenced a lot of the work that I do.
Yeah, I look through the social justice lens each day through my position. I'm on the nonprofit team at my firm. When I first heard the word lobbyist, I thought of like big tobacco, like oil, real estate, and that turned out to not be the case. We have about 40 nonprofit clients who do such great social justice work across the city each day, and it's really a blessing to bring out clients and our clients and their clients to meet the council member. I remember the first interaction I ever had with a client was we represent Project Renewal, and they run City Beat Kitchen, which trains formerly homeless folks how to cook, and then they get restaurant jobs, etc. Part of what I did, my first cycle of budget advocacy, was bring the chef with us to City Hall. And I remember they handed out brownies.
Very
and
impactful,
stuff.
yeah.
Yes, and that's the most impactful part of my job. So it's very easy to get behind the mission of my nonprofits, having had this Fordham social justice background.
It would be a difficult process to remove the Jesuit footprint of who we were and who we are. You know, in my family, my dad is to this day goes to church every day. And I literally don't know anyone, I don't even know priests, who go every day. My dad, and people would see him on the street and say, Peter, pray for me, and he would. That was part of the Fordham overlay. And as you get through the next phases, politics and religion, not often talked about. So the way I was able to do that was I used my faith as a way to absorb and learn other faiths. And when you do that, there's a commonality and there's a peacefulness that takes away a lot of the strife that's present today. And I find that's lacking. I find it lacking in schools. I find it lacking in communication, in negotiations. It's okay to talk about and have faith, whatever it is. It should be a commonality, not a separator. And for me, I found the peace of enjoying. Some of the best things I had remembering was going to the different places of worship. I never would have had a chance to experience that. You just don't walk into synagogues and Sikhs and all these different wonderful places and then be treated with song and prayer. It is a beautiful part of this that's so often not spoke about. And that's where you find the commonality with people that you want to reach out to. When you see family and faith and struggles and how people do the soup kitchens and help each other, that's where I think the Jesuit overlay kind of really helped me to prepare for that unknown journey of learning spirituality through others.
George, could you hear the question?
I can, and this will have to be the last comment that I make because I have to jump off to something. This is an issue I've thought about a lot over the years. I'm Roman Catholic. I went to a Catholic college because I wanted to have that experience. And I go to church regularly on Sundays, even during Lent, sometimes on the daytime. But because I am a Democrat and I hold certain beliefs on the roles in the LGBTQ community in the society, a woman's right to choose, I found myself at odds with my church. And I've often said sometimes privately, I said, I don't let my religion get in the way of my faith, because I do have strong faith. But as a person who's run for office quite a lot of times, and I would argue out here in the suburbs, you run into more people who are conservative in their thinking. Westchester's a Democratic county, but there's a higher percentage of Republicans than you might find normally in most parts of the city proper. And the people who are Catholics, accuse me of not being a good Catholic because they point to those two issues primarily as me being out of sync. And without being too contentious with them, I say that, the Christian faith does not, and the Catholic faith does not devolve down to those two issues. The Sermon on the Mount, which my Jesuit, professors would highlight in different ways, talks about blessed be the poor, blessed be the meek, not blessed be the arrogant, blessed be the person that seizes power and forces their thoughts down your throat. And I think also Matthew 25, Lord, when did I see you naked? When did I see you hungry? When did I see you in prison? When you saw it in the least of my brothers, then you saw it unto me. When we have the opportunity in a county government, which is not a state government, it's not a federal government, but when we can do things to help people in need, when we can do things to help people go through the Westchester County Jail and come out and perhaps restart their life in a different way because we give them high school GED opportunity and college credit opportunity, I think that's the Christian faith at work. And we don't highlight it as being Catholic or Christian because my Jewish brothers and sisters have tikkun olam, repair the world. My Methodist and Baptist brothers and sisters rely on theology. My Muslim brothers have some of the same things. So you try to universalize this thing. It's your faith, but there's still the ultimate God. And even if you don't have faith in God, you still believe in certain principles, and those things mesh together. But it is a battle. It is a battle to be both progressive and Catholic, and to try to harmonize those two things. And I guess I'm a little closer to that ultimate election than most of my colleagues are here. But when I get to that point, St. Peter will decide. But until then, I think it is perfectly consistent to be a student of Jesuit teaching, go forth in the world, try to do good things, and do it in a secular society. And I'm glad I've been able to spend a lot of my life doing that.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Pleasure to be with you all.
Jeff, can I just tell you a quick story that accentuates that? Man, I told you how my dad.
Jeff left.
Jeff,
Oh, there's
Yeah.
Jeff.
There's Jeff. Now we have a new guardian angel. So when Dad, I told you how he's at church every day. When he was Speaker of the City Council, the toughest day of his life was when the first LGBTQ vote was coming up in the 90s. And it was to allow for the benefits to accrue to a family member to have actual teachings finally in school. It was a very conservative council. And here he was, Catholic speaker. And he wanted the vote to come forward. And it passed. And it was praised as one of the very first landmarks. That afternoon, the cardinal wanted to excommunicate me. He cried. And he was in, and this is not a man who cries, and he was in such pain and he was in turmoil, and we as sons and family were trying to understand it, and he said, my church is turned against me. And it was one of the most powerful things. Eventually, that was all worked out, but he did not relent and understood the need for the equality at the sake of his own church turning his back on. And it shows you the challenges this field that you will face, because it is not easy. But a Fordham family really helps. So when he was able to draw on his fellow Fordham grads, it helped. Because out of the blue, he'd get a phone call, Peter, we're with you. Peter, let the vote happen. It's okay. It'll be a first. He wasn't troubled often, but that was one of the most troubling days he had.
My little bit of commentary is I like that I went to Fordham and not Notre Dame. Let that be as it is. For the rest of you, question please.
Oh yeah, this kind of goes along that same thought process, but I was curious if there were a time when your personal values were challenged. And I know we were talking about religion, but also maybe like party politics. We talked about how it's really polarized now. I was curious if you all could talk about that or something.
I don't think there was a time when you're not challenged. None of the votes were really ever easy. There always was the balance of you were elected for a reason by a constituency that expects that vote to be heard. Then you have to balance that with your fellow men and women that are in the body with you, and the fact that they have their districts and their bills and their representation. And the second part of government is the budget. And no one really talks about what your capital and expense priorities will be. But an elected official, one of the biggest impacts they have is how the budget is used in the community. And it's rarely ever asked. When you go to debates, no one ever says what will be your capital priorities, how you're going to spend the funding, what will be your vision in this community for decades to come. That should be asked. That is a critical part of governing. And how you acquire and balance the budget, that becomes the struggle that's every day. So what if a vote would compromise that? You have at your hands a budget and a possibility of bringing back schools, libraries, parks, educational funding, generational change. You have, on the other hand, I need your vote. It is a very difficult question, and I had to challenge with that all the time. In the end, I always stayed true, and I was able to go to sleep with doing the best I could in balancing that. In the balance, there is calmness, and you can achieve the best you can. You're never going to get everything on each side. And if I did, to your expense, I just created an enemy. Her district didn't receive the school and mine did. Well, maybe we could both do an elementary school and sacrifice a middle school. Or maybe we could do a middle school and then work together on a park. That's what's missing. That type of commonality and understanding that it's okay to fight for what your community and what you believe in, but not at the expense of what the other person believes in too. And that's where we have to get back to. And you're not right, I'm not wrong, we're not. It's a matter of being vigorous in that pursuit of doing the best. And I think when Jeff brought up my district, it was a good point. It could go either way. So did I not do well because it went back to Republican? Did it do well because I flipped it to Democrat? Did it make a difference? Like, I didn't run as the party type of thing. It was me. It's me, my wife and kids, and my son was born during the election. We literally went as a family. And we were basically apolitical in a political family, because that's why I moved away from my dad's district. I didn't want what you said. I wanted to create my own footprint. But it's a very difficult question, and that is a very real challenge of the sacrifice that happens on your vote.
That's right.
Right?
To your point, I think also what's important is to surround yourself with people that have those different thoughts. And I say that because, like, I was technically excommunicated from my church, but I'm still there because my views are very progressive. But I think what has been important is I've been able to show other young people that you can be a person of faith and also be progressive, and you can have these values. And so I think it's important to not shy away from being surrounded by people that think differently, because that is how you start conversation, and that's how you start discussions, and that is how you start to understand. It's something you mentioned at the beginning, that you feel like that's been changing, that people are not willing to understand. And I think that's because it's hard. We are living in times where, like, a lot of people are going through a lot of suffering and a lot of fear, and, like, their rights are being put on the line, and there's a lot going on, right? But I think in order for us to kind of get rid of the animosity, you need to put yourself in the position of surrounding yourself by those who think differently, so you can learn how to understand them. And so that's why I haven't left my church, and I continue to be there, and I continue to be, I guess, a beacon of light, right? To tell people you can be different, right? And to your point where you asked about how, like, if we've ever been challenged, etc. Like, we have an area, for example, in our district, Throgsneck, that is some areas are blue, some areas are red. We represent an area that's, like, everything is so different. If you look at the Senate District 34, so different. We cover Riverdale, we cover Kingsbridge, Westchester Square, Morris Park, Van Cortlandt, the South Bronx, which now is taken away with, like, the new lines that were redrawn, but we still cover Hunts Point, Castle Hill, Throgsneck, City Island, and then Pelham Bay, like, all of this. And it has so many different people. So how do you talk to people who are different, being like in an office that's mainly progressive? And I remember having this conversation with one of the bids in Throgsneck, and I absolutely love him, and he knows that we think differently, but, you know, we came down to the common cause of, like, we were in the pandemic, we had to get masks, we had to get kits, we had to get stuff for the community, and I said, let's work together, let's get it out there, let's do it. And I think with that simple, just one call, like, hi, I'm from here, like, we have this stuff, let's work together and help others. No one is gonna tell you, no, I don't wanna help someone because you think differently. They're gonna get down there and want to help others with you. And so that has been a huge change, I think, within our representation in that area, because they realize, you know, even though we might think differently, the common cause is we want to help folks, and we're not gonna stop helping you because you think differently or because you stand for something different. So I think that's the most important part, just being able to reach out and surround yourself by folks who are different.
I have a little interesting perspective here, a little to add. My predicament is much different. I can choose who the clients are. They cannot choose who their constituents are.
As hard as we try.
You have to represent them all.
Right. So in my job as a lobbyist, I have to believe in their mission to get behind and advocate for their mission in front of council members, state senators, people like that. So I have not experienced personally in this role a challenge, because they've all aligned with my personal mission.
Maybe one more question from the audience, if anybody has a great idea. I don't want to put the pressure on you. Any question, doesn't have to be great, please.
Hello, this one is to Ms. Johana, if possible. You mentioned that you were a first-generation American. How difficult did you find navigating working in politics with that kind of a background? You know, often if you grow up here, you, through osmosis, get a lot of the cultural things that, you know, people don't tell you often about, and that you're just kind of stuck learning as a first-generation American. How difficult was that aspect of it when you were trying to work in government, where knowing people and all of those unspoken things matter a lot? You know?
Yeah, I think one of the things that helped the most was I was never ashamed of my background. I always say I'm a proud Colombian American, and I think my roots are a part of who I am. So I have always been genuine in whatever space I'm in, and it's helped me in the sense that like we live in a place that's so different. Like you're gonna meet someone that's from somewhere else or that has like 5 different mixtures in their families, and like I think, you know, part of being an immigrant is learning how to grow up and how to cope and learning the systems. And also I have parents who speak broken English, so I had to translate documents since I was like 5 years old, and I had to be at every parent-teacher conference. And so being upfront about those struggles too. Like I remember one of the first times that I was at the office, I requested for us to have a discussion about this, and it was about requiring Spanish-speaking employees to automatically give Spanish-speaking services. So for example, if you were a constituent services team, to translate and do that stuff. And I told them, I'm like, you know, it's a skill we have to learn. There's some trauma behind it, so there needs to be more compensation for that. If you are someone who speaks 2-3 languages, like you didn't just speak 2-3 languages just because you were born with it. You have to struggle and learn it and grow up in a family that also you have those struggles that you learn from that. So I think part of what has helped me is the fact that I've never shied away from those differences, and I've actually brought them to the forefront and part of the discussion. And so my colleagues were able to understand why I was requesting compensation for being a Spanish-speaking person and being required to translate things, because I think it's something that I deserved as someone that spoke 2 languages, right? So I think that's something that I probably would not have done maybe like 5 years ago, but I went through a lot, and I realized that, you know, the space that I'm in, I deserve to be in. And so you have to have these difficult conversations so that people understand that as a first generation anything, there are some things you have to learn, and you have value in the experiences that you bring to the table as the first person in your family, right? There are a lot of skills that we don't talk about as first gens that you have to learn, right? And so I think, you know, bringing that to the table and not being ashamed of who you are is part of what has helped me be a first generation anything.
Thank you so much. Talk to us, schmooze with us, ask us for jobs or internships. Thank you so much to our panelists. Really appreciate you guys.
I just want to say I'm Deborah Caruso Moran. I'm president of the Alumni Association. I just want to thank all of you, Paul, Joanna, Doug, Jeff, for being here tonight. Doing a night like this is why we exist, and I'm just so happy when we can bring esteemed alumni to students and show them what they've accomplished and how they can help you and you can help each other. So thank you all for coming. Thank you, Charetta Robinson and Steve Esposito from the Career Center, and Terry and Jennifer and Casey from our board who helped put this together. Thank you.
So I actually want to mention one thing before everybody leaves. I think this is really crucial, especially in connection to this conversation. Utilize the resources. I think this is something I talked about the other night about mentorship, networks, and connections, going back to what the panel said. We have a great platform which is called the Fordham Mentorship Network. And I would encourage all of you to take advantage if you're an alumni or if you're a student. It's a great way to make these connections as well and do flash mentoring and discuss with people that are in different industries and different areas. And this is where those connections come from. This is something that's new that we just acquired not too long ago, but we want to get more students involved and connecting on the platform. Also alums that want to connect with students as well on the other side to really have conversations about different types of opportunities, but also understanding how to find, different pathways that might fit, what your personal goals are long term. So hopefully you'll take advantage, definitely utilize the Career Center. We have an office here in G49 here at this campus. And then of course at our Rose Hill campus, we're in the new McShane Campus Center on the 2nd floor. Yeah.
Is that
that is going to be official as of this month.
Yes.
So yes, they are renaming McGinley Center after Father McShane as he retires this year. So definitely come visit us if you're at the Rose Hill campus at our new center.